Hey, this is Stone, and I hope your week is starting off right. And actually, I know it is if you're listening to this video on Monday morning. So, I got this request or this question on my blog, and I thought rather than just replying to the question, it's so pertinent to most people today that I would just make a video about it and share it with everyone. So, the question really went something like this. This person has been trying to start a nonprofit. And it's a great idea. It's the idea of putting adopted kids into good Christian homes, and they want to start this nonprofit. It's something they've been thinking about doing for years, but in their words, they have too many irons in the fire, and they're just not getting it done, even though they feel like they have been given this gift of being able to help children and very quickly be able to understand the person they're talking to and be able to read people very quickly to be able to place a child in the right home. So they have a gift for that, and they're really wanting to utilize that. But the reason they haven't gone through the steps for years is because there's so many other things that are important and urgent that's on their plate. And they use the term irons in the fire, but I'm saying important than urgent for what I'm getting ready to share with you. So the reason that I wanted to share this is because how many of us have gifts? If you look at the New Testament, it doesn't even really say, it does say we've been given gifts, but there are many times gifts are mentioned, and it's just presupposed that we have all been given spiritual gifts. So we all have that gift within us to do something to contribute, right? But yet, we end up in areas in our lives where we're not utilizing those gifts, and we're working extremely hard and not tapping into those gifts that God has given us. So in order to answer the question, and the question really was, when I have so many irons in the fire, how do I then get to that important goal? How do I get moving forward within that goal? And in order to really answer that question, I need to give you some fundamental background. This is taken from First Things First by Stephen Covey. He calls it the 4 quadrants of time, and it's brilliant. He basically breaks down where all of us spend our time into 4 different quadrants. So let me give you this foundation really quick. Quadrant 4, and by the way, there's a blueprint at stonejordan.info. It gives you this as a visual, and it gives you your 7-day challenge as well. Just click blueprints there at the top. But quadrant 4 is the quadrant of not urgent and not important. Time that is not urgent and not important. So this would be, sitting and watching TV. This would be endlessly surfing the web for no reason. This would be just talking to a friend on the phone for a long period of time for no real reason. It's the quadrant of waste, okay? Or the quadrant of distraction. It distracts us. Then you've got quadrant 3. Okay, quadrant 3 is time that's spent on things that are urgent, but they're not important. And this is called the quadrant of deception because really there isn't anything that's urgent but not important. But a good example would be, let's say there's this call that I have to make and I really don't want to make it for some reason. I'm unsure of how to do it, or it's somebody I really don't want to talk to. Maybe I've put it off already, and I see that my desk is a mess. So I decide kind of psychologically that this is really important that I get my desk cleaned, even though it's not really that important. Okay, that's why it's called the quadrant of deception. It's urgent, but not important, but really it's not even urgent. That's something we make up in our own head, but we spend our time there sometimes, according to Stephen Covey, and I tend to believe that. So then we have quadrant 1. Quadrant 1 is the quadrant of urgent and important, okay? This is time that's spent on things that are both urgent and important. Now, most productive people, if you talk to people that are productive, that get things done, most people actually spend their lives in this quadrant where they're doing things that are urgent and they're doing things that are important. You might already know the answer to this, but what would you say if I asked you if that was the best place to spend the majority of your time? And if you really know much about time management, you know it's really not. And that takes us to quadrant 2. Quadrant 2 is the quadrant of not urgent, but important. Okay? These are the things that are most important that nobody is yelling at you to do them. And I also call this the Christian quadrant for myself Because the things that I do, the ritual things that I do for my Christian walk, they're not usually areas where somebody is yelling at me, right, to take care of them. But they're very important to my Christian life. Okay, things like reading my Bible. Nobody is yelling at me or keeping me accountable to read my Bible, but it's very important. Prayer, same thing. You might think about seeing somebody in the hospital. Very contributory, very important, but same thing. Nobody's yelling at you to do that thing. So when you talk about having irons in the fire, as this person said in their message, what they're saying is they're spending their time doing things that are urgent and important. And that is keeping them from doing the nonprofit, that thing where they have their gift, which is not urgent, but it's very important to be utilizing that gift that God has given them. So here's the mistake people make. They think whenever they have something come up that is important, that could juice them, that's very fulfilling, that's very contributory, they think, okay, I have to take time away from this other stuff that I'm doing, this productive, important stuff that I'm doing, and I have to make time for this thing that's important but not urgent. And that's why most people fail. Because if you think about it, over time, you can get rid of some of those urgencies, but whether they really are urgencies or not, you have labeled them in your mind over time as urgencies, okay? Psychologically, those are urgencies for you. How difficult would it be just to snap your fingers and say, oh, that's no longer urgent, and say, I'm going to take that which I used to think was urgent, it's really not, and I'm going to use that time and do this other thing. It might happen a little bit, but you're not going to get a lot of time from that. Now, that's what I call the long game. Over time, you can learn how to get rid of urgencies, and a lot of the videos on my blog really talk about how to get past that, and I have spent years trying to master not doing just urgencies or not doing mostly urgencies, but that's the long game. What if you have that thing you want to do and you just want to get it off the ground, you don't want to sit anymore, you've had enough, you want to get going with it? How do you do that tomorrow? And here's the answer. That quadrant 4 that we talked about earlier, it's that quadrant of waste. It's the quadrant where things are not urgent and they're not important. Okay, through past experience, you know where you really spend time, what your actions are that cause you to spend time within that area. Where do you think in this week you will spend most of that quadrant 4 time? And you can write it out or type it out. The top 10 places where you spend quadrant 4 time. And then you've got to ask yourself, okay, if these are the areas that I waste time, that I spend in the quadrant of waste, now I can take that time and I can schedule, I can be intentional about it, and I can set aside time to do that important thing that is not urgent, that has just been sitting on the shelf for so long. Now, trying to take time away from the urgencies, that's the wrong way to go about it. It's a failure. But taking time from quadrant 4, that is where you're going to be successful. And the truth is, if it's something that you're really passionate about, if it's where you have a gift, you will be able to get that done because it will juice you more than just being lazy and just sitting there. But you have to schedule it. You have to have intentionality, which is one of the 4 keys of managing your time, intentionality. So there is a 7-day challenge at stonejordan.info. I hope I've made that simple and clear enough for you. Again, just click blueprints at the top to get your blueprint. That could make it clearer. I hope you have a great week this week. And I hope this does help you to just utilize your gifts and to be more contributory. Whatever you do this week, remember 2 things: be purposeful and professional with it. Thank you so much. Leave a comment below. Let me know what you think, whether you agree, whether you disagree. What do you do to get the important things done in life? Let me know that as well, and go get them this week. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you next time.